so quiet. I suspect that if you had any real interest in hearing about what exactly brought me to that empty bar, shooting whiskey, and sounding all dire and ominous, I have to go back a little while. Back to the point where I honestly had no such grasp for things like bargaining with someone who hates me with the intensity of a herd of charging rabid rhinos. And yes, I realize that rhinos aren't actually susceptible to rabies. It just helps make my point, so just stay with me. The events leading to that bar are a long time in the making, and to gloss over the actual beginning is like skipping the first 30 minutes of Die Hard. I mean, you'll still have plenty of fun, to be sure, but it lacks context and gravitas, and so just start from the beginning, as was intended. The real story, after all, is a bit more complicated than Girl Hates Boy, and there's a lot to understanding all the shuffling that took place to put me there. So when we finally do get back there, I want you to have a full and clear a picture as possible. Mostly because it'll save me the trouble of having to keep going back just to make it make sense. What can I say? I'm a giving kind of guy. Now, a lot can change given the right amount of time and a huge set of eventful collisions. Now here's the part that I keep coming back to. Part of this whole wacky experience that I can't conceivably find another contributive cause for. And here it is. I hadn't even really wanted to go to that party. It was one of those last-minute choices made under the crushing weight of peer pressure and the promise of two things: free booze and plentiful female company. And Tom had come to me impassioned, claiming that there was no way I'd regret it and he'd consider it a huge favor. He was in sales, so I knew he'd give a convincing case, and maybe I knew that on some unspoken level, and that's why I left my door open. Maybe I wanted to be convinced into doing something. I'll never know. The Friday had been uneventful, and I had a pile of work on my desk. Well, okay, not a pile exactly. I'm an artist after all, so I don't even have an actual desk, but you take my meaning. Plates of artist proofs laid out on corkboard with the script pages along covered my work table, and my notepad in hand, and kept scribbling notes and quick sketches for my review with the team on Monday. He came into my office, a well-lit space on the corner of the building, and the two walls that weren't floor-to-ceiling windows were covered in inspirational pieces that I had collected since college. A model of a 1971 Mustang painted gloss orange, posters by Jim Lee and Michael Turner, a sculpture of Hellboy, a huge litho of Flash Gordon I saved from the old lady's yard sale when I was dragged along by my ex-wife. All these things were gleaming beacons of imagination and visual rebellion. Icons and images not of the present, or they were created but in an age yet to come. The work table in the middle of the room was strewn with sketches and panel drawings of my latest work. Tom, as usual, sported a golf pro shop look, khaki pants and polo shirt. His hair had been overly styled just like every Friday. You had to come out with us tonight, Vaughn. I had worked and socialized with Tom for nearly a year, and he still didn't say my name quite right. Not a shoebox-shaped vehicle. My name is Vaughn, with a long A. And some people are just dense that way. It's Vaughn, remember? Tomb? I explained, intentionally saying his name wrong. He ignored me, rolling his eyes and said, "Look, I've got the hookup, but only if I bring at least one more person," he pleaded as he crossed my office, his salesman grin splitting across his narrow face. I typically had to plan carefully to avoid most of Tom's now infamous Friday nights. He'd been going on about this Friday all week. But to me it smacked of another weekend bender leading to Monday morning stories that started with lines like, "I woke up in the bathroom and had no idea why there was pudding in my pockets." I liked Tom, and he was a good guy for an advertising sales rep. One of the few guys I could stand who dressed like he'd been kicked out of a clothing catalog. But his scene wasn't really my own. I've been working at Finite Eternity Studio for nearly a year and couldn't keep avoiding those guys who kept other guys like me in work to do forever. Another life, I'm sure we'd be the best of friends. But right now, our friendship was mostly limited to work buddies and maybe someone I'd call to help me move in a clinch. I wasn't against being friends, just not with anyone in particular. I hadn't kept any real close friends since college. I'm a friendly dude. I just find it hard to keep a really close stable of friends since I moved back to California a few years ago. I've been a little bit busy being socially selfish, a discipline in which I'm not keen on letting anyone get too close who might spoil my fun. I have a love of being social, but a disdain for being judged and made to feel doubt about my lifestyle. Don't get me wrong, though. I have a stable of pals, acquaintances, buds, homegirls, but not anyone I'd seriously classify as a circle of friends. It's just been easier that way. "I know you want to come. I heard about you at the Mercury back in February," he probed, his grin once more shining out. I sighed and put down the stack of storyboard proofs I was thumbing through. Drink a dozen beer bombs and make out with the hot bartender in front of everybody, and suddenly I'm the poster child for party time awesome, I said sarcastically. That adventure is another story altogether. Well, that's what I hear anyway. Tom didn't pick up on the sarcasm, instead choosing to hear a self-professed partier brag about his latest episode. It wasn't the case. That whole thing is wildly out of proportion. He sat at my work table and smiled. Come on, man. Stephanie told me this club of her office reserved for the night has an open bar for guests of the firm. I smirked at the idea of getting soused, better yet, spectacularly shit-faced at no cost to myself. But there had to be a catch, knowing Tom's propensity for overlooking details. Which club, I asked. Tom didn't answer right away. He simply raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms. Oh no, it couldn't be. So I pried. Joking, right? He then produced from his pocket a stack of glittering club passes, waved them dramatically in front of my face. Full access VIP room and no cover charge tonight at the one and only Gratify. Gratify. Most exclusive club in the whole of Lower LA. It opened 2 years ago, and ever since had been strictly A-list for those who could get in with the A-list. There were rumors that it was even particular which celebrities it let in. We tried once to get in, but the line got whittled to nothing so fast we barely got a look at the front door. Gratify lately had been in the news for holding questionable events, but no one could really say with any solidity what those events were, or even if they'd taken place. I heard a rumor once that it held an actual orgy, but I think I'd had too much to drink when I heard it, and it may have in fact been something else entirely. One other time, in a non-drunk situation, someone told me they had hired a special contractor to build it into a Roman-style bath for a week. Aside from the possibility of waterborne gonorrhea spawning there, originally that sounded pretty impressive if it had been true. And most importantly, to guys like Tom and I, Gratify boasted the highest percentage of attractive female clientele of any place in the known universe. A ratio we had been led to believe was squarely 4-to-1 or higher. If that was as low as it ever got, it'd be a miracle if you left without something nubile and perky on your arm. The thought of such an arrangement floated around my head for a long moment. Vaughn, Tom said, snapping me out of my mental debauchery. I took one of the passes from Tom's waving hand and inspected it. Sure enough, the ticket was immaculately designed, and as an artist I can appreciate all the work that had gone into it. Sadly, most of them will probably end up on the floor, trampled under the feet of drunken clubgoers, with myself being a distinct possibility. Damn my own shallow streak, I thought, as visions of me surrounded by a bevy of young abashed co-eds in the hottest party in the city. I'm in. Tom practically hugged me as he patted me on the shoulder. Great. Meet me at my place around 9. We're going to have a blast. I smiled as he left, knocking his knuckles on the nameplate on my door, which read, Bueren, Senior Art Director. He shouted to some of the other crew out in the cubes, Van is coming! I shouted after, Vaughn, damn you, with the long A. Heard a few shouts of agreement and laughter. I never could figure out why it was I'd gained notoriety and popularity among the people I worked with. It certainly wasn't because I tried. The days of my starting there, I had guys like Tom practically filling my calendar for me. But like I said, I hadn't really wanted to go to the party. Funny how things can change when you start getting led around by your penis. Later, I left the office, running into my friend Cliff from the art department. He was a bit younger than me, but I liked his attitude towards life. He firmly believed that he had no social skills, which wasn't true at all, but it sure made drunk Cliff a fun act to watch. Cliff was a rare person, that he was the only guy I knew who was happier at work than he was at home. His apartment was like the dorm room of a student who never fully moved in. Stuff still in boxes, a fridge full of what could only be barely classified as food, had no effort whatsoever to make it into a home. First time I walked into his place, I had to fight to stop myself from asking if he was donating all of his stuff to the Salvation Army. He always looked tired and had the oddest ability to consume more caffeine than any mortal should and not have an irregular heartbeat. He was an oddity to be sure, but all his eccentricities equated to him being one of the most talented artists I had under me. Really, the only thing holding him back from having a job that looked suspiciously like mine was he had no feel for planning or politics. He was an introvert who never looked further than his drawing table. And I loved his dedication to his craft, but pitied him because there was so much he could do for his work besides producing. But I have that failing that always makes me see the potential people carry around going unused. Nevertheless, He and I were quite good friends. I patted him on the back as we entered the elevator. Looking forward to the weekend, buddy? He dodged the question as usual. Like I said, he seemed to loathe going home for the weekend. Oh, hey Vaughn. I heard Tom talked you into going to Gratify tonight. Yeah, he did, I answered as the elevator began to travel the lobby. Although I suspect if he knew that all he needs to do to get me to go anywhere was to wave the prospect of comped alcohol and booze in my face, I'd be in a rough patch. Yeah, he'd be just the sort to exploit such a weakness. Well, he is in sales. That's the kind of thing that will surely be used for evil rather than good. Cliff smiled a little bit, and then he added almost sheepishly, I'm going too. I snorted in disbelief. Get out of here. He turned a fun shade of red and looked at the door. Tom bet me I wouldn't go. Oh yeah, what did you bet? I prodded. Cliff generally avoided social situations where there were, people. Cliff smirked. I promised not to tell. I looked at him, folding my arms. Oh, that is the chunkiest kind of bullshit. If you weren't supposed to tell, you wouldn't have brought it up that you were. The elevator stopped and the doors opened. Cliff exited first. He parked on the back lot of a building, so we left through different doors. And as we parted, he turned and said, I'll tell after I win the bet. My guess at the time was that it was probably something suitably childish, like a case of energy drinks or some meaningless trinket that had value to the boy in both Tom and Cliff. I had a burger for dinner at my favorite burger place, Thunderburger, banking on the heavy-duty grease and protein to shield me from the worst of the alcohol's first strike of the night. Thunderburger had been one of those happy accidents I discovered about 6 months before. I loved it immediately. It was such a melange of styles, and how could you not love it? It took the vintage 50s style diner and soda shop and married it to a punk attitude and added just enough of Hooters to be utterly classless, and yet somehow a huge hit with both genders. The floors were red tile and the countertops were black and chrome with yellow and red neon lights dashed among the vinyl booths. The bar was finished in vinyl record covers under a thick layer of clear coat, and there was a vintage jukebox in the middle of the place playing anything but vintage music. I heard everything from the Beatles to Rise Against blare from the sound system, and I was never disappointed. My booth, as it had been dubbed by the manager, Chino, was off to the left when you walked in the double doors. You had a good view of the whole place. I was always sat there at the bar. Although the bar stool was typically reserved for recovery actions that seemed to happen most Sunday mornings. Mostly because it was close to the kitchen, and if I needed a lot of delicious greasy fries, I'd rather they just show up mysteriously, rather than having to watch from a distance, as they take forever to arrive by train. I had taken Cliff and Tom there once for lunch and regretted it immediately. Not because they embarrassed me or anything, but I now worried that I'd leaked the secret of the perfect burger joint, and it would no longer be quite the secret it needed to be in order to remain as awesome as it was when I first walked in. Needless to say, a few weeks later, autographed celebrity pictures started hanging over the bar. And not small-timers either, A-listers. Think box office smash types who make more money in a year than some countries manage to spend on a war. But to my relief, Thunderburger remained relatively well hidden despite it. Although from that time forward, I made it a point to always look my best when I went there on the off chance I got a shot at hitting it off with any young starlets who happened through there. Optimism being a strong suit of mine that usually clouds any realism that may be present. Made sure I dressed for the evening, eschewing my usual jeans and bowling shirt and going for my vintage black suit that when worn with my glasses and red tie made me look like I could be having a drink with Sinatra or Jack Kennedy. And yes, I mean Jack Kennedy. John Fitzgerald Kennedy is who history remembers. I remember my dad telling me about Jack Kennedy, the last president to have an iota of cool. I had 3 of such suits, which I bought after my divorce. Funny, really, considering I never wore them for anything professional, only social. I suppose that when you get to a certain point, you just want to look good for the sake of it, and not for any particular reason. But that may just be my own perspective on it. The waitress at my burger place, Felisha, knew me as a regular, and we frequently flirted. I think the fact that I was the only guy to ever eat a bacon double cheeseburger and a 3-piece suit at Thunderburger had everything to do with it. We've been dancing back and forth with the flirting for months. I'd learned the hard way what can happen if you chase tail where you love to eat, and when I dated Mara from the best Mexican girl this side of Sepulveda. But that too was an exploit for another time. That's a short story, but we're not going to get into it. With Felisha, I decided to play it cool, make sure that, if it went much further than flirting, I could at least feel relieved that it was 70% on her. That's not my rule. It's a well-accepted fact that whoever makes the first move is 70% responsible when it all goes down the tubes. Again, not my rule. I don't know why that night she decided to act more forward than usual. Objects keep colliding. Nothing more than the slightest amount of precognition is ever possible, and most of the collisions are blind, stupid luck regardless of how coincidental they may turn out to be. It was quite striking for a girl who worked in a place that made a living off of making already fat Americans that much fatter. Blonde hair worn in a sort of punk fashion, amazing hazel eyes, and ruby lips reminded me of the classic beauty of Kim Basinger mashed together with the undeniable hotness of whoever that Australian chick was from the first Transformers movie. Although I won't lie, her body was the first thing I noticed. She could have been a swimsuit model with curves like that. And I was vocal on more than one occasion that she looked a bit like a Second World War style pinup girl that you'd see painted on the side of a bomber plane. And the uniform of Thunderburgers waitresses only added to that image in truth, but I'll leave your imagination to figure out exactly what I mean. She strolled over to my booth and she sat across from me in her low-cut white v-neck, doing a good deal to distract me. As I mentioned, the uniform was flattering to say the least. "So what are you doing here?" she asked, leaning over the table, looking me in the eyes. She did that thing that women do when they bite their lower lip while they wait for you to answer. It was a signal I had seen many a time, and one that I loved picking up on. So I played it cavalier as usual, giving my typical outlandish reply to lure her in with my cunning sense of humor. I leaned back from the table while running my hands down the front of my suit, straightening the material. I smiled a little and let it fly. "Well, I was considering attempting to foil an international ring of diamond smugglers down at the pier tonight, but I got roped into going to a club instead." Felisha laughed heartily. When she first met me, she said I was dressed like a spy, so I frequently used that as the base for many related jokes. She smiled. "Diamond smugglers, huh? Sounds like fun." I continued to play. "Well, I don't have cable in my place yet, so I have to make my own fun." She laughed a little more as I did. "So you're going to a club?" "Yeah, my friend from work got tickets to an event down at Gratify tonight," I said, lying on the smug. I love to gloat, and if the tickets are for the most exclusive club in town, so much the better. Her face showed genuine surprise. "No way!" I continued my posture of pretension. "Oh yeah, I'll be headed there in a little while." "I can't believe this," she confessed, brushing a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "I'm going to the same party tonight." Uh-oh. Possible party paradox approaching. "Well, what's that I hear?" "But Vaughn, you just found out the totally hot waitress who's into you is going to be at the same party. So unless you act like a real douche, that's action you could bet the farm on." And that's true, but here's the catch. I'm not what you'd call the one to always take the smart play. I like to gamble, although never with money. Just people, things, situations. I had in mind a pretty clear picture of what would happen if Felisha and I made it a point to enjoy our company at Gratify. And while appealing, the whole concept of having the night bathed in spontaneity is somewhat sullied by having a girl already there expecting me. See, the thing about me is, when I start something, I don't like to mix philosophies. Dragon style is not to be mixed with tiger style. Beer is not to be mixed with wine, and so forth. A night out with the boys at a hot club is not to be mixed with potential girlfriend events. And yes, there is in fact a difference between going out looking for girls and potential girlfriend events. They are mutually exclusive because the tactics of one don't necessarily apply to the other. They both involve a similar base strategy, but it's like special ops guerrilla warfare versus full invasion campaigns. And while both are combat, they aren't executed the same way. Now, I'm getting off the trail again. The point is the party. And a lot has happened. I'm still trying to put it all together. It's funny how little things always appear more clearly afterward, even though you didn't pay much attention at the time. Now, the party was, as expected, incredible. Tom made good on his boasting and building up of the event the previous week, and the music was a great mashup of hard rock classics and new age techno, and I don't know how it worked out so well. I didn't much care. AC/DC in any variety is good to me. And to say the decor and atmosphere at Gratify was decadent is like saying water is wet. If the hedonists of Rome had visited this club, they probably would have had an orgiastic stroke and never left the place. Everywhere were lush velvets, crystalline postmodern art pieces, lighting designs that rivaled major motion pictures. The entire place had been built from the ground up to be the quintessence of beauty and self-indulgence. Never before in my life had I been blessed to see such wonders in place, where I could also get sloppy drunk. I'd be remiss if I overlooked the best decoration of all. And in retrospect, viewing it this way, it's a little more misogynist than I typically like to roll. And let me tell you, holy powers above, if I knew they made women that beautiful and promiscuous and set them loose and gratify, I'd have given up trying to find them so hard in places like bookstores and cafes and regular bars. I personally was up to my eyeballs in luscious legs and pouty lips before it was even 11 o'clock. Drink and merriment were abounding. I found our VIP section already brimming with good-looking women, but I had to pay for at least my first drink or I'd look like a slouch that only showed up because of the free drinks. Not a classy move. So by appearing to be someone who buys their own drinks in a place like Gratify, I could subtly implant in the minds of all who saw that I was worthy enough to have been there before, and not as a tag-along on a roster that needed to be filled, regardless of that actually being the case or not. Tom and Cliff vanished amongst the throng once they sighted the VIP area, but I took my time, getting a feel for the space. I'm the only person I know who will let the feeling of an area dictate the attitude I use while I'm in it. Much the same as most people act based on the level of hoity-toity dress let them act. But in my case, it's a bit more primordial. I take in the building, or the park, or the street, whatever the case may be, and I just feel it in my bones. Somber hallway finished in stone and brass requires a little more reverence than an Irish pub and its weathered bar and scuffed floor. Manicured plaza with evening lights is something that always needs a smile, while a place like DMV screams, "Don't touch anything and be careful who you look in the eye." So I felt it out. I breathed the close air and smelled the hammering aroma of female sweat from the dance floor combined with dozens of perfumes and beverages. Squinted as the prancing lights of the dance floor strobed and pulsed with the music that thundered more over there than where I was. I was bombarded by the sensations of the place, and I loved it. Something about drowning in a sea of stimuli seemed so appealing that night. Just losing myself in the utter chaos and decadence of the place made my head swim. I drank that first drink and then another, and before I knew, I was at the proper stage just to hit on whatever I thought was attractive that came within a 3-foot radius. Not proud of it, but that's who I was. I wasn't out to be picky because the pickings were top shelf anyway. In fact, I'm pretty sure at one point I was just swinging for the fences before I settled down and was hitting on 2 girls at once. The impressive part is that they didn't know it, as I was hitting on the other. One didn't know I was hitting on the other because they were standing on either side of a pillar and couldn't see each other. I was quite proud when I realized I'd successfully lined up 2 at once, but much like the 7-10 split in bowling, the gap makes it nigh impossible for all but the most expert. As versed as I was, the prospect was shaky from the get. One was Asian, and from what I gather, a med student at USC, while the other was the typical California girl with a trust fund and bleached blonde hair, low-cut shirt, and a pair of shorts that may as well have been underwear. They had as much in common as I do with a Kodiak bear. To sum up, I struck out, but hey, points for originality, right? The sheer number of women in the place made swinging for the fences a completely viable option. There was a near endless supply, and someone was always on deck. What's that? What happened with Felisha? Well, I asked when she'd be getting there, and she told me not till she got off work and showered and such, so not until at least midnight, which gave me plenty of time to do one of 3 things. 1, already be out the door with the young new Bob Blonde number. 2, plot an escape, should the party be a real stinker, and zip over to another spot like the Mercury where I was regular. Or 3, supposing the party is decent, but the company less so, bank on Felisha as a contingency plan. I can hear it from every female in earshot. For shame, Vaughn, you can't just expect some girl to be your consolation prize because you strike out all night. Firstly, wrong. I can and will if the mood strikes. And secondly, as a well-versed social acrobat, one has to plan for all eventualities, lest one be forced to sleep alone when there is perfectly good tale to be had. I gave Felisha a loose promise that I'd probably see her there, and tipped while making sure I stuck out in her memory, should option number 3 need to be enacted. After the first hour of Gratify and about half a dozen super imported beers and 3 shots of something so high-end that Tom swore the label was in Latin, I was well and good on my way to getting a big fat drunk on, the Thunderburger special doing its best to keep me from taking too hard a hit early in. Another hour passed, and I talked myself up to a pair of hot redheads. Only one of which was a true redhead. The other one was one of those dye jobs whose natural features make you forget that she's not really a natural. And I found them amiable enough until they got into an argument over which one of them I should buy a drink for. Well, I knocked back the rest of my beer and told them if they didn't settle down, I was able to walk away and then nobody gets a drink. He's a pompous one, isn't he? The natural asked her friend. Reverse told me that was more of an objective statement than a pointed comment. The friend laughed and said in her best seduction voice, "I kind of like it." Me being me, I gambled. "Well, that works out well for me, ladies." I smiled my best grin and sat down between them, putting an arm around each one. And for those not in the know, this maneuver, which I call opening the bun, takes finesse and timing. Much like when taking a hot dog bun, the two girls each being one half of the bun, from the package and prepping it for the dog. Frankfurter, being me, too much force and the bun falls apart. No hope of supporting the dog in any agreeable fashion, and not enough force and the dog just kind of sits on top, never really achieving what the whole combination of elements is there to achieve in the first place. The more you know. Much like the bun, there is a critical mass phase trying to hook up with two beauties at once. Too eager, you're going to fall apart at the seam and have no bun whatsoever. Not enough confidence, and that bun will never open up, and you're out in the cold. Bunless. I had yet to pull it off to completion, but a dozen or so near misses had given me a wealth of experience to draw from. I forget who said lessons gained from one failure are 100-fold to lessons learned from one victory. For me, at least, this time I was playing just about perfect. The natural purred something breathy in my ear as I waved the waitress over to bring us another round. I learned her name was Chrissy and that her friend was Livia. Livia was a bit friskier and had a bare leg draped over me and was hanging on my every word. Chrissy had the typical signs of just enough to drink that she was what I like to call properly greased up. She asked me where I got the suit. Me never being one to volunteer a serious answer, I spouted with faux serious face. Took it from Clark Kent as he changed into Superman. Even I know it wasn't my best work, but those two laughed so hard you'd swear I was hosting Saturday Night Live. From the good years, mind you. That's when I knew I had him hooked. When a woman laughs at almost everything you say, and even you know it's not that funny, you're probably in. Doubly so when there's booze involved. Now I remember that totally cheese line because as the two redheads' laughter faded and I started to make out with Chrissy, Livia ran her hand down the front of my pants and something happened that I can't ever forget. It's that thing that when it comes along, you just know that no matter what you do or say or think, it's happening whether you want it to or not. I remember that regardless of the clamorous noise, I was deaf. I saw with crystal clarity, but I cannot remember any sounds at all. What I saw might stay with me forever. I saw Tom and Cliff coming up the stairs back in the VIP area, each one carrying a handful of drinks. Behind them, I saw this huge guy. I mean huge. He was 7 feet tall if he was an inch, dressed in what looked like a white monk's robe. His face hidden because his hood was up. Come up the stairs and shove them apart. Tom and Cliff dropped their drinks, the glass shattered, and everyone's attention snapped to this enormous man in the robe. A big bouncer stormed out of the crowd and tried to intercept the guy, but in a flash of motion and sweep of a white robe, the bouncer was on the floor, gagging and spitting out blood. The giant in the robe got to the top of the stairs, and even from the shadow of his hood, I could feel his eyes boring right into me. If I hadn't seen him take out the bouncer, I probably would have just continued on to my way to a perfectly agreeable threesome. But once I saw that, I was frozen. I couldn't think or move or speak. Like any large object, no matter what speed it moves, it seems to move slower somehow. That's how it was with the guy in white. His stride was so long that he closed with the booth I shared with Chrissy and Livia before I could believe. Because of his size, it seemed to be moving in slow motion. People scattered away from him as he stopped in front of me. A heavy voice, which sounded weathered but still plenty loud, met my ears, the first sound I remembered hearing since my spell of deafness. "Then, Bueren?" I arched an eyebrow and sat forward, overlooking that he'd said my name wrong, and took a deep gulp of beer. "Maybe. Who are you? The White Wizard of Beverly Hills?" I still wish I'd answered differently, although given what I now know, I doubt it would have made much different sense. Next thing I know, the great white mystery man grabs me by the collar, and with one punch that felt like a freight train, cracks me hard across my cheekbone. I wavered for a long second, and then everything went black.